Time to look at the front pages of some select national dailies this morning. We begin with the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper for today, and these are some of the stories you can find across the newspaper. After Supreme Court victory, Fintri vows to prosecute suspended Adamawa resident electoral commissioner's allies. He did talk tough yesterday, and it's safe to say that there is no letting go despite the Supreme Court victory. Harsh forex reforms will strengthen Naira, according to CBN Governor Michael Cardoso. And the big story on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper for today: protest rocks Niger over cost of living. Jigawa Taraba residents want food prices controlled. Students demand action, say inflation a threat to education. Kano governor to meet president over hardship, seek help to address situation, according to the Labour Party. Directing that message at the president. And the first lady is weighing in also, and she says hard times over soon. Okay, take her word for it, and you have the picture there of the protest in Niger State, where people are saying enough is enough. It did happen in the state capital, Minna. Many passengers abducted on Kogi Abuja highway. Once again, the kidnapping stories have become ceaseless on the front pages of the national dailies. Page 5 has more on the recent abduction. Police protesters clash in Senegal over postponement of presidential polls. Nigeria repatriates 18 Cameroonian illegal migrants from Benue. And finally, on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, EFCC arrests General Overseer over alleged 1.3 billion naira fraud. All right, that's it on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. Let's take a look at the Daily Independent for today. Daily Independent newspaper. These are some of the stories. National Association of Nigerian Students flay federal government over rising inflation, threaten street protest. While escalating insecurity, Sage, Ubani call for state police and true federalism. The big story on the front page of the Daily Independent says Nigeria needs to borrow 21 trillion naira this year to avert bankruptcy. Now, is that an exaggeration? Because that is scary. Details of this story on the pages of the Daily Independent. And Niger residents protest high cost of living, block roads. Labour Party asks Tinubu to seek help, says condition unmanageable. To other stories on the pages of the Daily Independent: basic education, Nigeria experiencing learning crisis, according to UBEC. We brought you that story a little earlier. Tariff hike, exchange rate volatility destroying our business, according to clearing agents. Hard times will soon fade away. This is according to the First Lady. And we say amen to that, in all honesty. Let's finally take a look at the News Direct before we get into the analysis this morning. From the top, federal government targets all year round farming to curb food inflation. CBN declares $2.4 billion of forex backlog invalid after forensic audit. More on that story on the News Direct. Benue residents flee as armed men kill 10. What is happening in Benue State? More on that on page 3 of the Nigerian News Direct. And in other news, divestments, failure to domesticate production responsible for hike in drug cost, according to the federal government. And it is set to roll out executive orders to mitigate prices of drugs. So as you can imagine, the inflation is not just on food commodities, it's also on other goods as well, drugs included. The Debt Management Office offers two federal government of Nigeria saving bonds for subscription in February. Okay, and 7 individuals face charges for alleged pipeline tampering in Lagos. More on the divestment story on page 3 of the Nigerian News Direct. All right. Back here in the studio, we have with us Dr. Theophilus Abba, Director of the Daily Trust Foundation, join us on the program to provide context and analysis to some of the top stories this morning. Doctor, it's good to see you as always. Good morning.
Good morning.
Where do we start? Let's talk about the protests, because it has become emblematic of what has been the Nigerian tale so far. Give me your 2 cents on what this represents.
Well, what happened in Niger State was a natural consequence of what we are facing in the country. And recently I was discussing with some friends. I said, look, we are likely going to face something that will equal the NSAS protest in 2020. Because, you see, the cost of, food, maybe not any other item, but food is becoming unbearable. A bag of rice is about 70,000 naira. You see, it's unimaginable. You know, it's totally unimaginable. And there are so many things. Those who do business, those who do, who go to the market to buy in bulk and sell, they can no longer go to the market because you bought maybe a bag of rice at 60,000 2 weeks ago, and then you sold it at maybe 65,000. You return to the market to buy a bag of rice, say, well, you can't get it for 65,000. You have to pay 70,000. That's not how to live. Because one of the things that make life, bearable is predictability. You should be able to predict that, look, I can enter into the market and buy this. This can happen. These are the circumstances I find myself. This is the implication. You see, when people are saying, okay, we are adjusting, to the previous price, you go to the market today, you meet a new price. And the unfortunate thing is that it's not as if you are earning something.
Purchasing power is going down.
Your purchasing power is gone down. You are not earning the way the cost of living is rising. Salaries have not been increased for those who earn salaries. Then for those who do business, people prioritize food. If your vehicle, is damaged, you are likely not going to the mechanic. Some weeks ago I was shocked. My mechanics called me. I said, Oga, we'll not see you again. I said, well, we're not managing ourselves. Right. So the cost of living is quite high. And this started in Niger, and I expect it to spread in other parts of the country because it is unbearable. Now, you see, maybe like the fatalistic comment made by the First Lady, say, it will soon, things will soon get better. But how will things get better? Are you going to import food? You understand? Is there any measure that will be put in place to say, okay, these grains will be available, food will be available? Do we have food in our, in our reserve to offload and to begin to sell to people at cheap rates? What are you going to do? Are you going to import from Niger Republic? Are you going to import from Chad or Cameroon? What's going to happen for you to say, oh, things will soon be better? We are not seeing, effort being made to see that things are better. For instance, we are not. Most of the promises that tinubu has made, we've not seen them come to pass. Many of them.
We've not seen a response from the presidency to the protests, to what has happened in Kano, in Jigawa, and in Taraba. And yes. What do you make of that? What does the body language say?
You see, the issue is that this thing goes beyond words. I read a statement last night that the presidency said that the cost of living is not, is better in Nigeria than in other West African countries. We are not in other West African countries. Why not comparing us with South Africa? You understand? Why not comparing us with Europe? Because that is where we should be. You are not saying, oh, because other West African countries, they pay higher. I don't know whether that is empirical. Then we should also, what is paid in Nigeria is not what is paid in other West African countries. Nigerian lecturers are going to other West African countries to lecture because what they earn in Nigeria is far less, than what they earn, what other lecturers in other parts of West Africa. We hear that, the cost of living is better in Nigeria. That is not a consolation. And that is not the kind of response we expected. You see, because when you discover that the cost of living is going high, then there are things you must do. You must say, okay, we are going to import rice You know, we're going to subsidize rice. We're going to subsidize healthcare. We're going to subsidize this. Transportation, we have to bring the cost of transportation. You see, we are bringing vehicles, luxury buses that will pack people. But we have not seen this thing. Me, I have not seen. Because anytime I complain about it, look, is it that I am not, is it that I don't see clearly? We don't see this thing happen. You understand? Rather, is the people who are producing even food for us, they are being threatened by, they're not being threatened, they are sacked from their farms by bandits, by whatsoever you call them. Like what's happening in Benue, you're talking about Benue just now. The community that was sacked in Benue is a food producing community, the Agatu community. The land is fertile and they do all year round farming. And now they will sack from their communities. Last week we heard another community in Kogi State sacked. Farm destroyed and all this. Now, we are not seeing deliberate steps being taken to curtail these things. And the cost of food is going up. And you are telling us, we are not suffering the much that other West African countries are suffering. That is not the right approach to it. We expect that something deliberate. We want to see our president say, okay, we want to bring down the cost of food. So we are bringing food, importing food from other parts of the world if we cannot get food in Nigeria to make available to Nigerians.
Okay, with regards to the Forex, the CBN governor said at the end of the day, the reforms will strengthen the Naira. Does his message inspire confidence in you? Well,
what the kind of reforms he's talking about, I don't know what it is. Because we are hearing all sorts of, saying, for you to own a bureau de change, you must have $1 million, capital this, and all this and all that. But like there's an article I read last week, and it's quite interesting what the argument that person came up with. He said something. He said, look, the reason why Forex is scarce is because at the end of every month, allegedly anyway, you see, the money accrued to government, state government is so much that even state government vehicles, go to bureau de change to mop up the Forex because they have excess money. For instance, on the average, every state gets about 25 billion now on the average. Because if you distribute 1.1 trillion, which they got the last time, divide by 36 states, it's about 25 billion per state. And then maybe the salary they pay to workers is no more than 2 billion. I don't think there's any state, apart from maybe Lagos, that pays more than 2 billion or at most 3 billion to their workers on a monthly basis. So if you pay, let's say 2 billion, let's say 5 billion to your workers, and I think there's no state that pays 5 billion. If you pay 5 billion as salaries, you now have about 25 billion to play with. We're not seeing the states buying vehicles that will ease transportation. We're not seeing the states providing any subsidy to their people, apart from Borno that we hear once in a while say they bought vehicles, they bought bags of rice and gave to people in the rural community. Many states are not helping their people, but they're getting the huge sums of money. And then we are told that they take them to bureau de change, convert these things to dollars. And the person argues, say, look, instead of giving this money to state governors who quickly convert this thing to dollars and then put pressure on the dollar, why don't you say, okay, there's this excess money that we are getting now because we remove subsidy, fine. Now we keep this money, part of it in so and so account. We use it for infrastructure, so that there will be no pressure on Forex. But now, if people are just speculating, buying up the Forex. If you release $2.4 billion into the market, there are people that will buy it up because they have excess cash. They ought to distribute this cash, but they are not distributing the cash. Right. They are keeping, converting them to dollar and keeping them and doing whatsoever they want to do with the dollars.
Right. Rather an unfortunate situation, but all true at the same time. To Adamawa State, where on page 13 of the Daily Trust newspaper, the governor who has just secured election victory this past week says that, listen, to quote him, he says, as for those who connive with the resident electoral commissioner to make us pass through those democratically embarrassing moments, I want to assure you once again that we owe it a duty to prosecute all of them according to the dictates of the law. This is the only way we can protect our electoral process and democratic culture from undue abuse. I don't know how much latitude the state government has to go ahead and prosecute individuals, but we do know that INEC itself has already instituted a case against the ousted former resident electoral commissioner, Hudu Ari. What are your thoughts about what has happened, especially with regards to the Adamawa State incident? It's quite one of those embarrassing moments from the 2023 elections.
I think what happened in Adamawa was too embarrassing to be left the way it is, because we're thinking that the man will be dealt with in a manner that will become, a deterrent to others. The election not concluded. Somebody who was not empowered to announce election results, gathers people together, gathers the press and say, look, this is the winner of the election. You understand? It was embarrassing, So as long as this kind of a thing happens and the person is not made to face the music, as far as we are concerned, we're not even hearing much about it. It's like, well, it will be swept under the carpet, somehow, And as long as this happens, next time, worse things will happen. Because people had voted, the votes were being counted, and somebody abridges it and say, I want to declare the winner. I'm the resident electoral commissioner. And then, so if the person is in court, it won't be wrong for us to see him defend himself. It won't be wrong for us to see how the trial is ongoing. And that is why, the government may say, it's not really clear what is being done. We're going to institute our own suit against him. Because, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but there could be grounds, there could be grounds. Maybe it's okay, this guy wanted to cause crisis, chaos in the state, or this guy violated, one of our local laws, something like that. But I'm not satisfied with the way, the judicial speed, is. Because the Nigerians are supposed to be, kept in the know. Because it was quite embarrassing. Even everybody was shocked. So he did have to win an election. The result not completed, the country not completed, and somebody comes to declare another person as winner. Is that how to do an election? So the question, even for instance, I was even asking myself recently, what's happening to this guy? So it's supposed to be in the public space that this is what is being done, so that others are prevented from engaging in such fraudulent activities.
Unfortunately, this is, again, one of those familiar Nigerian stories of impunity of people in power. But many passengers abducted on Kogi-Abuja highway, yet another abduction story. No surprises there, but as far as security on the highway is concerned, just give me your take on what we are not doing, because we've seen some sort of response from the Special Intervention Squad that was put together a few weeks ago, but clearly the scale at which these abductions or attacks are happening are more frequent compared to what the security agencies are able to do to curtail it.
I think where that abduction took place, I think I know the area, and it's a very lonely road from that part of Kogi State.
I think Ete Oko.
Yes, from that part of Kogi State to go to Enugu State, and it abridges the journey from Abuja here to the east. If you pass through that road, at least you save about 1 hour, if not more. If you are going to, because it's like a decoy. It's a shorter route. That goes to the east. And I passed through that place I think in December. What I noticed is that, in spite of the fact that there were reported cases of abductions on that road, because even when I passed through that place, there were issues. People were saying, this place is very dangerous. Please, you have to be very, very careful. When you are driving. There are no security men along that route. And you see, it's not only now, but this has been happening. So I thought that, the security agencies who have been deployed on that road. It's a lonely road, about 30 minutes drive, no more than 30 minutes of, it's not up to an hour drive. But it's so lonely because there are farms on both sides, on both sides of the road, and there are villages, but those villages are maybe inside, what I call, they are not close to the main road. So the kidnappers or the bandits or the attackers will just come and rob people, and then there will be no no help. Even if you scream, there will be no help. So I'm thinking that when we have noticed a kind of consistent attacks on a particular route, there should be security presence. You know, so even if it's not forever, but over a period of maybe 2 months, 3 months after this attack, okay, let there be security men, so policemen, you know, every 2 kilometers, every 3 kilometers, let's keep security men there, so that the road will not become so endangered. You know, because the way it is, you know, these people were driven into the bush and now being asked to pay 15 million each. You know, and without, without the presence of security, without any deterrence, these guys will do it again. They have done it now. Next week they will do another one. In 2 months they will do another one because nobody is responding. Right. So we can't continue to allow, you know, even Nigeria to be at risk in that manner.
Let's talk about Senegal, because protests were also experienced or put together by members of the opposition who are unhappy about the indefinite postponement of the presidential election this year by February 25th. What do you make of this development? President Macky Sall last year had to come out categorically to say, listen, I'm no longer going to contest. But if this postponement does see the light of day, there's every chance that the election will not be held until late in the year or perhaps even next year. This is, for members of the opposition, an extension, indirectly, for Macky Sall to stay in power. Well,
it's very sad that is happening in Senegal. You know, if you remember what happened in some African countries where there were coups, you know, if you go to Mali, Côte d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, even Guinea, things like this were the things that led to coups. You know, because if you have, you know, been elected for a 4-year term, you are not the only person in that country. You cannot say, oh, you are the god of that country, and so you must remain in power. You know, 4 years, you leave. Others will come. You understand? Things that you couldn't do, you can actually sponsor another person to continue your program. But if the constitution says 4 years or 5 years, after that 5 years, if you have opportunity of seeking another term, seek another term. But as long as, as soon as you complete your term, pack your load and go. Others will continue. You see, these are the things that lead to crisis in Africa. You know, because he is telling us, or telling his citizens that, look, I'm not contesting the election is postponed indefinitely. There cannot be anything like that. The lawmakers in that country have to come together. Because if you are postponing an election, then you must give us a new schedule. And the new schedule must be ratified by the lawmakers. So, this idea of playing God, you know, it's not helping us in Africa. It's leading to coups, leading to protests, leading to crisis. At times it can even lead to warfare. Because the guys who are eyeing the president will say, look, this guy wouldn't want to leave until we force him out. It could lead to warfare. I remember what happened in Ivory Coast, you know, where Gbagbo did not want to leave. Gbagbo had completed his term. Now, leave. He said he was not going to leave. You know, he said he was not leaving. And there had to be war. There was war in Ivory Coast for many years. You know, at a point he was even arrested and taken to ICJ, where he had to serve a kind of jail term because of what he did. Gbagbo had already completed his term. Let there be another election. He was saying, "Oh, you contest, we'll do this, do that," and there was crisis, there was war. So, I hope ECOWAS leaders, you know, can prevail on him to tell him that, look, you are a member of ECOWAS, one of the heads of government in ECOWAS now. You can't do this. Because if you continue to do this, you plunge the state into another crisis. And then we will now begin to say, okay, where would they? And Senegal, for instance. Senegal is too civilized, too modern for this kind of political decision.
It's rather a disturbing development that we've seen over the past 24 hours. We'll keep tabs on that development because the National Assembly did sit yesterday to deliberate on certain proposals that have been brought before the legislature to consider, you know, in the motion for an extension or postponement of the presidential election in Senegal. We're going to have to leave it here for now. Dr. Theophilus Abba, thank you most kindly for joining us as always. I appreciate your professional perspective to, you know, the insight into some of these stories. Thank you most kindly for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And that is our show for you today. Thank you most kindly for joining us. We do appreciate your time and company. Don't forget, Daybreak returns tomorrow live at 8 a.m. Until then, my name is Abdullahi Ahmed. Good morning and stay tuned for 360 Sports coming up at the top of the hour. Good morning.